Luke Schulte, Field Agronomist for Beck's Hybrids here in Southern Ohio, and the question continues to surface, do I plant or do I not plant? So I'd encourage you to think about a couple things. First of all, the seed requires about three different things. It requires moisture, temperature, and oxygen in order to trigger germination and ultimately emergence. So let's focus on temperature for just a little bit. I put a thermometer in the ground this morning where we live here in Cedarville, and at 2 inches depth in a productive clay loam and no-till corn stalks, it was 47 degrees at 8:30 this morning. So about the coolest point of the day. Upper 4 or 5 o'clock is typically the warmest point of the day, and I'd expect that's going to get into the upper 60s, maybe even low 70s. So we'll see a significant amount of temperature fluctuation. However, heat unit accumulation is going to be rather slow. If you look at the 10-day forecast, that's all the further I went out, 10-day forecast appears that we're going to generate about 33 to 34 heat units over the course of the next 10 days. Keep in mind, soybeans require about 135 to 140 heat units in order to emerge, and corn's about 110 heat units in order to emerge. However, contrary to a lot of Aprils and early Mays, our soil aeration or oxygen levels are rather good. Many growers have commented how good field conditions are. And we know that seed also requires oxygen. So soil oxygen levels are particularly good. One of the more critical things to also contemplate is that 24 to 48 hour rule that many of us talk about. And particularly it's about the imbibition or the absorbing of water and the temperature of that water that first 24 to 48 hours. And we know in particular, like with soybeans, if they imbibe water that's 50 degrees or warmer for that first day or two, they can withstand those cooler temperatures that are likely to prevail, it looks like, with the forecast afterwards. As long as that first 24 to 48 hours is when they can absorb at least plus 50 degree water and imbibe that type of water. So from a weather standpoint, we're likely to receive a cool rain on Saturday and Sunday. Odds are pretty good. So keep in mind, making sure that soybeans are planted and seed is planted 24 to 48 hours ahead of that could increase the likelihood that we won't withstand the more significant stand losses that can occur if it absorbs cool water with that first drink. So emergence is going to take a little while, as most people are expecting, multiple weeks, in fact, as many of you are already expecting. If you are going to try to capitalize on these field conditions, I would encourage you to plant soybeans. You can plant corn as well, but I would highly encourage soybeans. If you look at PFR data would support that. We know that we have a higher consistency in terms of higher yielding soybeans with early planting dates versus corn. With corn, we desire for every plant to make it so that we get 1, maybe 2 harvestable ears per plant, where soybeans can compensate a significant amount more, right? If they have thin stands around them, they can put on more nodes, they can put on more pods per node, and they can even actually accumulate larger seed size at each particular node with thinner stands. So I would encourage you to focus on soybeans if planting conditions would allow. Also keep in mind a couple of things if going to the field to plant beans. Plant your best drained fields first. I think that goes without saying. However, the drier the field, the warmer the soil conditions will be as well. That water is actually cooling our soils. Also avoid sandy fields or your coarse textured fields, knowing that the coarser the soil, the more temperature variance there will be from the morning to the late afternoon, and the sandier the field or the coarser the textured soil that there is, that fluctuation will be even greater. Also, keep in mind, avoid fields that have historically are problematic in terms of weed control. So we know that the biggest aid to any weed control program is a competitive crop or a shade, and I would expect, or we should contemplate that we could experience some stand loss with planting right now, given the forecast. So if we're going to have a thinner stand, let's focus on fields that are historically a little cleaner, knowing we're not going to rely on shade as much for weed control. Last thing I'm going to talk about is variety selection. Knowing that it's going to take multiple weeks, in all likelihood, 3-4 weeks for soybeans to emerge, I would focus on varieties that handle wet feet, but particularly handle some of our more sustaining or harsher residual chemistries a little better. Chemistries like PPOs, even a lot of your ALS chemistries like Classic in particular, they sustain us longer in terms of weed control, but they also can be a little harder for soybeans to metabolize and ultimately endure. So we know that varieties have some variance and have some differences amongst them. So in the Extend lineup, plant varieties like 3091s, 3789s, they're going to withstand that longer period of time that they have to endure that chemistry better and get a higher percentage of stand establishment. In the Freedom Plus lineup, that's products like 3546 and 3992s tend to withstand wetter conditions, but also those chemistries like PPOs and ALS chemistries. So those are some things to consider if you are contemplating capitalizing on these good field conditions that some of you are experiencing. Have a good day.